My ex-husband invited me to his engagement party. He wanted everyone to see how far he'd risen and how low I'd fallen. But when I stepped out of that silver Bentley with my 3 babies and my billionaire husband beside me, his smile disappeared. What he didn't know was about to destroy everything he'd built. Let me tell you exactly what happened that night. Before we dive into this absolutely insane story, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, this is one wild ride you won't believe actually happened. Turn on those notifications because this story has more twists than you can imagine. Now, let me take you back to where my nightmare began, 4 years ago when I thought I'd married the love of my life. I met Derek when we were both nobody. He was a dreamer with big plans and empty pockets, and I was a waitress working double shifts just to pay rent. We fell in love fast, got married faster, and I genuinely believed we'd build our empire together. But there was one problem I didn't see coming. His mother, Patricia. From the moment Derek brought me home to meet his family, Patricia made it crystal clear that I wasn't good enough for her precious son. She'd look me up and down like I was dirt on her expensive carpet. She called me a gold digger, which was hilarious considering Derek was broke. I was the one paying our bills while he went to business school. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, coming home with aching feet and an empty stomach just so he could chase his dreams. His sister Amanda was just as bad. She'd invite Derek to family dinners and specifically tell him not to bring me. When I did show up, she'd make comments about my clothes, my hair, my background. Patricia would serve everyone dinner and conveniently forget to set a place for me. It sounds like something out of a movie, but this was my real life for 3 years. The worst part? Derek let it happen. At first, he'd defend me quietly, but as time went on, he just stayed silent. I watched the man I loved slowly turn into someone I didn't recognize. His business started taking off in our 3rd year of marriage, and that's when everything changed. Suddenly, he had money. He had connections. And his mother's voice got louder and louder in his head. "She's holding you back, son. You could have anyone now. Someone from our world. Someone worthy of the family name." I heard her say those exact words one night when I came home early from work. I stood outside our bedroom door and listened to Derek say nothing. Absolutely nothing. That silence broke my heart more than any insult ever could. 3 months later, in November, Derek handed me divorce papers. Just like that. 4 years of sacrifice, of love, of building him up, and he threw me away like I meant nothing. His family lawyer made sure I got nothing in the settlement. Not the house, not the car, not even half of the savings I'd helped build. I walked away with $3,000 and the clothes in my suitcase. Patricia threw a party the day our divorce was finalized. She called it Derek's freedom celebration. I heard about it from a former friend who sent me the photos. There was Derek, smiling, surrounded by his family, holding a glass of champagne while his mother toasted to better things ahead. I cried for 3 days straight in my tiny apartment. But life wasn't done with me yet. In December, about 5 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I started feeling sick. I thought it was stress, maybe depression, but when the nausea wouldn't stop, I dragged myself to a free clinic. The doctor came back with a smile and said, "Congratulations. You're pregnant, about 6 to 7 weeks along." I almost fainted right there. My hands started shaking as I did the math in my head. 6 to 7 weeks meant I got pregnant in late October. Derek and I were still married then. We'd had one last night together before everything fell apart. One moment where he seemed like the old Derek, and now I was carrying his child. But then the doctor said something that made my world stop spinning. "Actually, let me do another ultrasound. There's something unusual here." 20 minutes later, she showed me the screen. 3 tiny heartbeats. 3. I was pregnant with triplets. I sat in that clinic for an hour, staring at the ultrasound photos. 3 babies. Derek's babies. And he had no idea. Part of me wanted to call him immediately, to tell him, to make him face what he'd done. But then I remembered Patricia's face at that freedom party. I remembered Derek's silence when his mother called me trash. I remembered how easily he'd thrown away 4 years of marriage. So I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to tell him. These babies were mine. He'd made his choice, and I'd make mine. The next few months were the hardest of my life. I was working 3 part-time jobs while pregnant with triplets, living in an apartment so small I could barely afford heat. The morning sickness was brutal. There were days I could barely stand up, but I had to because bills don't pay themselves. I'd see Derek's photos online, living his best life with his new girlfriend Natasha, some social media influencer with perfect hair and a perfect smile. Patricia would comment on every photo. "Finally, a woman worthy of our family name." Those comments felt like knives, but they also lit a fire inside me. I refused to let them win. I refused to be the broken ex-wife they wanted me to be. Then in March, something unexpected happened. My Aunt Helen passed away suddenly. We weren't particularly close, but she'd always been kind to me. Her lawyer called and told me she'd left me something in her will, a small software company with 8 employees and more debt than profit. The company was struggling, barely staying afloat, but it had one promising project, an AI software that could revolutionize data analysis. I was 4 months pregnant at this point, my belly just starting to show. I used my last $2,000 to keep that company running. I worked from home, hiding my pregnancy from everyone, staying up until 3 in the morning learning about technology and business and everything I didn't know. I had no choice. This company was my last hope. By May, we were nearly bankrupt. I was 7 months pregnant, enormous with triplets, exhausted beyond belief and watching my last hope slip away. That's when my secretary told me someone wanted to meet about potential investment. His name was Julian Hayes. I'd heard the name before. Everyone in tech had. Julian Hayes, the self-made billionaire who'd built 3 successful companies by age 30. He was 35 now, and according to Forbes, worth about $8 billion. I had no idea why someone like him would be interested in my tiny, failing company, but I wasn't going to turn down the meeting. He walked into my office at 10 p.m. because that was the only time I'd agreed to meet. I was working late as always, wearing an oversized sweater trying to hide my huge pregnant belly. Julian was tall, with kind eyes and this calm presence that immediately put me at ease. He looked around my small office, saw the files everywhere, the empty coffee cups, the ultrasound photo I'd forgotten on my desk. "You're pregnant?" he said. Not as a question, but as an observation. I nodded, too tired to lie. "Triplets, due next month." He sat down across from me and smiled. "And you're here at 10 p.m. trying to save a company. You remind me of myself 10 years ago, hungry, desperate, and too stubborn to quit." We talked for 3 hours. He looked at our AI project and saw what I saw, potential that nobody else believed in. At 1 in the morning, he made me an offer. $5 million for 40% partnership. Not ownership. Partnership. I was suspicious. Men like Julian Hayes didn't just hand out $5 million. What's the catch? No catch. I invest in people, not just companies. And you, Piper, are someone worth investing in. I signed the papers 2 days later. It was the best decision I ever made. 4 weeks later, at the start of June, my water broke at 2 in the morning. The triplets were coming early at 8 months, and I was terrified. I called 911, called my neighbor to drive me to the hospital, and then I broke down crying because I realized I was about to give birth completely alone. No husband, no family, just me. But I wasn't alone. Somehow, Julian found out. My secretary had his emergency number and called him in a panic. He showed up at the hospital, still in his suit from some business dinner, and he stayed. Through 12 hours of labor, through every contraction, through the emergency C-section when the doctors got worried, he held my hand and told me I was strong enough to do this. Sophie was born first, screaming her tiny lungs out, then Lucas, quiet and observant even as a newborn. Finally, Maya, the smallest but fiercest. 3 perfect babies. 3 pieces of my heart living outside my body. Julian visited us every single day in the hospital. He brought food, baby supplies, and most importantly, hope. When I came home with 3 newborns to my tiny apartment, he hired a night nurse so I could sleep. When I cried from exhaustion and fear, he reminded me that I'd already survived the hardest part. Over the next 18 months, something beautiful happened. The company exploded. Our AI software launched and became an overnight success. Within a year, we were worth $50 million. By the time the triplets turned 1, I was a legitimate CEO of a thriving tech company. But more than that, Julian became my best friend. He never pushed for anything more than friendship. He'd come over and play with the babies, teaching Lucas about computers when he was barely walking, reading to Sophie before bed, making Maya laugh with silly faces. He fit into our lives so naturally that I almost didn't notice when I started falling in love with him. When the triplets were 2 years old, Julian took us on a vacation to a beach house. On the last night, with the babies finally asleep, we sat on the porch watching the ocean. That's when he turned to me and said, "I need to tell you something. I've been in love with you since the moment you fell asleep on your desk at 8 months pregnant, but refused to go home because you had work to finish. I fell in love with your strength first, then your kindness, then everything else. But I need you to know I'll never pressure you. If you only ever want friendship, that's enough for me." I cried. I cried because for the first time since Derek, someone saw me as worthy. Not in spite of my struggles, but because of them. 6 months later, when I was finally ready to trust again, I said yes. We got married in a small, private ceremony when the triplets were 2.5. Nothing fancy, just us and a handful of close friends. The triplets were our ring bearers, stumbling down the aisle in their little outfits. They started calling Julian Papa Jules immediately, and watching him become their father was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Life was perfect. Our company was now worth over $200 million. The triplets were healthy and happy. I'd built something real, something mine, something that nobody could ever take away. I thought I'd never have to look back at my past again. Then 3 weeks ago, a gold-embossed invitation arrived at my office. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Derek's engagement party. He was marrying Natasha, the woman he'd been with since a month after our divorce. The party was at his family mansion, black tie, all of high society invited. And there, at the bottom, a handwritten note. "Piper, I'd love for you to come. It would mean so much to celebrate this new chapter with old friends." I showed Julian that night after putting the kids to bed. He read it once, then read it again, his jaw getting tighter. "He has no idea, does he? About the kids, about us, about anything?" I shook my head. "I never told him I was pregnant. He doesn't know the triplets exist." Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Do you want to go?" That question kept me up all night. Did I want to go? Part of me wanted to throw that invitation in the trash and never think about Derek again. But another part of me, the part that had been called worthless and trash and not good enough, wanted him to see exactly what he'd lost. I wanted Patricia to choke on her champagne. I wanted Amanda to see that the girl she'd mocked was now more successful than their entire family combined. But most of all, I wanted closure. I wanted to face them without fear. "Yes," I told Julian the next morning, "I want to go. But I need you with me." He smiled and pulled me close. Always. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Julian hired additional security because he didn't trust Derek's family. We had the triplets' DNA tested against samples we'd kept from Derek's old belongings, just in case we needed legal proof. The results came back exactly as expected. 99.9% match. They were Derek's children, no question. The night of the party, I stood in front of my mirror for 20 minutes, my hands shaking. I wore a navy gown that Julian had commissioned from a designer, elegant and expensive, but not flashy. The diamond necklace he'd given me for our anniversary sparkled at my throat. I looked successful, powerful, happy. Everything Patricia said I'd never be. The triplets wore matching outfits, adorable in their little formal wear. Sophie twirled in her dress, Lucas kept trying to untie his bow tie, and Maya insisted on wearing her favorite sneakers under her fancy outfit. They thought we were going to a fancy party, had no idea we were about to walk into a war zone. Julian looked at me as we loaded into the silver Bentley. Last chance to change your mind. I took a deep breath. Let's go show them what they lost. The drive to Derek's family mansion took 40 minutes. The triplets chattered in the back seat, excited about the adventure. I held Julian's hand the entire way, my palms sweating despite the air conditioning. When we finally pulled up to the mansion, I saw the string lights, the expensive cars, the guests in their designer clothes, and for just a second, I was that scared girl again, standing outside Derek's family dinners, feeling small and unwanted. Then Sophie squeezed my hand and said, "Mama, you look like a princess." And just like that, I remembered who I was now. Our security team exited the car first, 4 professional guards who worked for Julian's company. Then Julian stepped out, buttoning his jacket, looking every bit the billionaire he was. He extended his hand to me, and I took it, stepping out into the warm evening air. Cameras flashed, guests turned, and then I reached back into the car and helped my 3 babies out. The whispers started immediately. I could hear them rippling through the crowd like a wave, people pointing, staring, pulling out their phones. I held Sophie's hand, Julian held Lucas's, and Maya walked between us, oblivious to the chaos she was causing just by existing. Patricia saw us first. She was holding a champagne glass, laughing with some guests, when her eyes landed on me. The glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the stone patio. Her face went from pink to white to purple in about 3 seconds. Amanda grabbed her mother's arm, following her gaze, and her mouth fell open. Then Derek came outside. He was laughing at something Natasha said, looking happy and carefree, the perfect groom-to-be. He glanced toward the commotion and froze. His eyes found mine first, confused, then moved to Julian, and I watched him recognize one of the most famous faces in the tech world. Then his eyes dropped to the 3 children standing with us. Time seemed to stop. Derek's face went completely white. He stared at Lucas, who looked exactly like Derek had as a child, down to the cowlick in his hair and the shape of his eyes. He stared at Sophie, who had his smile. He stared at Maya, who had his stubborn chin. I watched him do the math. 3 children, roughly 3.5 years old. His hands started shaking. Patricia recovered first, storming toward us like a bull. "How dare you show your face here? How dare you bring your... She gestured wildly at my children. "My family," I said calmly, pulling Sophie closer. "I brought my family." "These aren't Derek's children," Patricia screeched. "You probably got pregnant by some other man and now you're here trying to trap my son." Julian stepped forward, his voice ice cold. "Mrs. Patterson, I'd be very careful about what you say next. Slander is expensive, and I can afford much better lawyers than you." Patricia's eyes widened as she finally recognized him. You're Julian Hayes." "I am. And this is my wife, Piper Hayes. Perhaps you've read about her. She was featured in Forbes last month as one of the top 30 CEOs under 35. I watched Patricia's world crumble in real time. Behind her, Derek was still frozen, his eyes locked on the triplets. Natasha appeared beside him, beautiful in her engagement dress, completely confused. "Derek, what's going on? Who are these people?" Derek couldn't speak. His father, Harold, pushed through the crowd, took one look at the children, and went pale. "Derek, those children, they have the family features." "They're not his," Patricia shrieked. "She's a liar. She's always been a liar." Lucas, my brave little boy, looked up at Patricia with Derek's own eyes and said, "Why is that lady yelling at Mama?" The crowd had completely gathered now. Phones were out, recording everything. Derek's business partners stood at the edge, watching their golden boy fall apart. I could see Derek's mind working, trying to understand, trying to deny what was right in front of him. Finally, he found his voice. "Piper, those children, how old are they?" 3.5, I said clearly. "Born in early June, 8 months after you divorced me." The math clicked for everyone. Natasha gasped. Harold closed his eyes. Even Amanda looked shocked. Derek stumbled backward like I'd hit him. "You were pregnant?" His voice cracked. You were pregnant during the divorce?" "I found out 5 weeks after it was finalized. You'd already made it clear I meant nothing to you, so I made a choice. These babies were mine. I raised them alone, built a company alone, survived alone. While you were celebrating your freedom, I was carrying your children." Natasha turned on Derek. "You have 3 children you never told me about?" "3? I didn't know." Derek's voice was desperate. "I swear I didn't know." "Because you didn't care enough to check," I said quietly. "You threw me away and never looked back." Patricia tried one more time. "She's lying! Demand a DNA test." Julian smiled, cold and sharp. "Already done." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. 99.9% match. Derek Patterson is the biological father of Sophie Lucas and Maya Hayes. Would you like me to read the report out loud, or would you prefer to maintain some dignity? The silence was deafening. Derek dropped into a nearby chair, his head in his hands. Natasha stood there, her engagement ring catching the light, tears streaming down her face. Harold was staring at his grandchildren with a mixture of wonder and horror. Patricia just kept shaking her head, unable to accept reality. The triplets, bless them, had no idea what was happening. Maya tugged on Julian's jacket. "Papa Jules, can we get cake now? You promised cake." "Soon, sweetheart," Julian said gently, his voice completely different when talking to her. That one word, Papa, hit Derek like a bullet. He looked up at Julian, at me, at the triplets who clearly loved this man. "They call him Papa?" "He's been their father since they were born," I said. "He was there for their first words, first steps, first everything. He earned that title." Derek stood up, took a shaky step toward us. "Piper, please, I need to talk to you, alone." Harold touched my arm gently. "Please, let him speak to you. Those are my grandchildren. Please." I looked at Julian. He nodded. "I'll be right here." Derek and I walked to the edge of the garden, away from the crowd but still visible. Security stayed close. Derek couldn't stop staring at the triplets. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "God, Piper, I'm so sorry." "You're sorry?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Derek, you left me with nothing. Your mother threw a party to celebrate getting rid of me, and I was pregnant. Do you understand what that was like?" "I was weak," he said, tears in his eyes now. "My mother, she got in my head. She made me believe that you weren't good enough, that I deserved better. I was an idiot, Piper, a complete idiot. You were cruel. You and your family destroyed me. I worked myself to the bone while pregnant with triplets because you took everything. I gave birth alone. I almost lost the company, lost everything, because you decided I was worthless. I was wrong." He grabbed my arms desperately. "I was so wrong. Please, Piper, those are my children. Let me be their father. Let me fix this." I pulled away from him. "You had a wife, Derek. You had a partner who loved you more than anything, and you threw her away because your mother told you to. Those children deserve better than a father who can be manipulated that easily." "I've changed." "Have you?" I gestured back to the party. "You invited me here to humiliate me. Don't lie. This whole thing was Patricia's idea, wasn't it? One last way to rub my face in your success." His silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought." I turned to walk away. "Wait!" Derek's voice was breaking. "Please, what do I do? How do I fix this?" I paused, looking back at him. "You don't fix it, Derek. You live with it. You wake up every day knowing you have 3 children out there who don't know you, who have a father who chose them, who loves them, who was there when you weren't. I want to know them. I have rights." "Rights?" Julian appeared beside me, his voice deadly quiet. "You want to discuss rights? We have lawyers who would love that conversation. Child support, back payments, supervised visitation if you can prove you've actually changed. But rights? You gave up those rights when you abandoned Piper." Derek looked between us, defeated. "I'll do anything. Lawyer, payments, whatever it takes." I pulled out a business card from my clutch. "This is my attorney. If you're serious about being a father, prove it. But Derek, if you hurt those children the way you hurt me, if you let your mother anywhere near them with her poison, I will make sure you never see them again. Do you understand? He took the card with shaking hands. I understand. We walked back to the party. Natasha was gone, her engagement ring sitting on a table, abandoned. Patricia was being comforted by Amanda, both of them looking furious and humiliated. The guests were all watching us like we were the evening's entertainment. Harold approached carefully. Piper, I know I have no right to ask, but could I see them, just for a moment? Unlike his wife and daughter, Harold had always been kind to me. Quiet, controlled by Patricia, but kind. I nodded. He knelt down in front of the triplets, his eyes filling with tears. Hello there. My name is Harold. Sophie, ever the brave one, stepped forward. Are you Derek's daddy? I am, he said softly. Then you're our other grandpa? Lucas asked. Harold's face crumpled. I suppose I am. Maya, always the gentle one, patted his arm. Don't be sad, Grandpa. Mama says being sad makes your tummy hurt. He laughed through his tears. Your mama is very wise. Watching Harold meet his grandchildren was bittersweet. He was a good man trapped in a toxic family just like Derek had been. The difference was Derek had a chance to escape and chose not to. Patricia tried to approach, but Julian's security stepped forward. I don't think so, Julian said firmly. These children don't need your poison, Mrs. Patterson. Those are my grandchildren, she shrieked. They're children who deserve love and stability, I said. Two things you clearly know nothing about. We left shortly after. The party was over anyway, destroyed by our arrival. As we walked to the Bentley, I could feel everyone's eyes on us. The whispers would turn into articles by morning. Derek's perfect image shattered. His engagement ended. His secrets exposed. In the car, Sophie asked, Mama, was that man our real daddy? I exchanged a glance with Julian, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, sweetheart, that was Derek, but Papa Jules is your daddy in every way that matters. Okay, she said simply, already moving on to the next topic. Can we get ice cream? Lucas and Maya cheered in agreement. Julian laughed and told the driver to stop at their favorite ice cream shop. As we drove away from that mansion, from that life, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I didn't even know I'd been carrying. I'd faced my past. I'd shown them who I became. But more importantly, I'd reminded myself that I didn't need their validation. I never had. I'd built an empire from nothing. I'd raised 3 incredible children. I'd found real love with a man who valued strength and character over status and appearances. Derek had invited me to shame me, but instead, he'd shamed himself. Patricia had tried to destroy me, but I'd risen from those ashes stronger than ever. And now, driving through the city with my real family, eating ice cream and laughing at Maya's sticky face, I realized something important. I'd won. Not because I had more money or a better husband or a more successful company. I'd won because I was happy. Genuinely, completely happy, and that's something Derek and his family would never understand. So that's how one invitation changed everything. Derek thought he'd humiliate me, but instead he lost everything. His fiancé, his reputation, and the chance to know his children from their first breath. His mother's cruelty destroyed his life, just like it nearly destroyed mine. But I survived. I thrived. And I found a man who values strength over status, who sees 3 babies as a blessing, not a burden. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button right now and share it with someone who needs to hear that your past doesn't define your future. Drop a comment below and tell me, are you Team Piper or Team Derek? And don't forget to subscribe because next week's story is even crazier. It involves a secret inheritance, a fake death, and a wedding crasher who turns out to be someone's supposedly dead sister. Remember this, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so complete that they can't touch you anymore. Your value isn't determined by who walks away from you. It's determined by how you stand up after they're gone. Those people who tried to break you, they're just footnotes in your success story. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that you're stronger than you think. See you in the next one.